The night shift carried its own weight, and Ethan Cole, a security guard, felt it pressing harder tonight. The building loomed silent around him, its empty offices holding more shadows than furniture. Ethan muttered, "Another long night. Just me and the screens." His voice seemed swallowed by the stale air. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting a pale glow over scuffed linoleum floors. The CCTV monitors flickered, their grainy feeds painting ghostly corridors across the wall. Ethan leaned back, rubbing his tired eyes, but a faint echo rattled the air vents. He froze, straining to listen. It wasn't the usual hum of machines or pipes. It was a dragging sound, uneven and heavy. His throat tightened. The sound stopped suddenly. He turned to the monitors again, and his breath faltered. There, on one of the screens, Ethan saw himself walking the hallway, flashlight in hand, even though he hadn't moved an inch. Ethan sat frozen with his pulse hammering in his chest. The air felt sharper against his skin, as if the vents exhaled something alive. He whispered, "This isn't real. I'm imagining it." Yet the figure on the screen did not vanish. It lingered, strolling casually past rows of office doors, with the exact stride Ethan used nightly. His throat tightened as he looked over his shoulder, half expecting to see the figure behind him. The empty room mocked him with silence. A bead of sweat ran down his temple. He muttered, "It's the cameras. Just bad wiring. A loop." His words felt hollow. Deep inside, he knew he wasn't watching a recording. Something was watching back. The hallways stretched endlessly across the monitors, shadows thick like liquid. Ethan leaned forward, breath shallow as his double turned its head slowly as if aware of being watched. His stomach lurched. The grainy face stared into the camera. Its blank expression revealed hollow eyes, filled with static. Ethan whispered, "That's me." His breathing grew ragged. The silence pressed in with only the clock ticking faintly. He reached for the radio, thumb trembling above the button, but he froze. Who could believe this? He stared into the eyes of his own reflection, trapped inside the feed. Ethan forced himself to stand. His chair screeched against the linoleum, echoing too loudly. He gripped the desk edge, knuckles white, whispering, "You can't be real." On screen, his double walked again. The flashlight beam swayed like a pendulum. The corridor walls seemed to pulse with each step. Ethan's heart pounded as he stumbled toward the door. He pressed his ear to the cold frame and listened. A faint shuffle answered him, perfectly matching the stride of his double. The hallway beyond the control room was smothered in silence. "And paydays." Ethan twisted the door handle slowly. Each click echoed sharp like a gunshot. The stale air rushed out as he cracked it open. His hand trembled around the flashlight. He whispered, "I have to know." The corridor stretched ahead, identical to the one on the screen, yet darker and more oppressive. Dust and rust scented the air. He stepped forward as the door creaked shut behind him. The monitors flickered violently. His double had stopped walking. It stood still with its head tilted as though listening. Ethan Cole's footsteps echoed as he walked down the corridor, each one too loud against the silence. He gripped his flashlight tightly, its beam trembling as if betraying his fear. He muttered, "Just the cameras. Faulty wiring." His words were thin armor against the dread. The hallway smelled of dust and cleaning chemicals, but beneath that lingered something metallic, sharp, and faintly sour. Ethan's throat burned with every breath as he glanced back toward the security room. The monitors still glowed, though he could no longer see the images. He wanted to run back, but his pride locked his legs forward. He paused when the fluorescent lights flickered overhead. His shadow jumped against the walls in jagged forms, bending unnaturally. The air hummed, and in the distance, he thought he heard faint footsteps echoing, matching his own stride. Ethan stopped mid-step as the hum above grew louder, vibrating in the ceiling panels. He aimed his flashlight at the end of the hallway, the beam cutting through the dark like a knife. Nothing moved, yet his gut twisted. He whispered, "Come on, Cole, get it together." The sound of footsteps echoed again, but this time they didn't line up with his own. They followed, just a beat behind, as if something copied his rhythm with deliberate delay. He spun around quickly, shining the beam back down the hall. The corridor stretched empty, sterile, and silent. His heart pounded so violently it hurt. He pressed his back against the wall, gripping his radio. His thumb hovered above the call button, but his pride wavered against his fear. Who would believe him? The radio crackled suddenly in Ethan's hand, a burst of static that made him flinch. A voice came through, distorted and muffled. "Everything all right, Cole?" It was Robert Hayes, his supervisor, a man who never believed in nonsense. Ethan raised the radio, hesitating. He almost said the truth, but the words caught. Instead, he forced, "All clear, sir, just checking a disturbance." His voice cracked slightly, but Robert didn't notice. The static faded, leaving Ethan alone again. The silence was worse now, like the building itself had heard his lie. His double had not appeared, yet the air vibrated as if it lingered unseen, just out of frame. Ethan wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and tried to steady his breathing, though each inhale rattled in his chest. Ethan lowered the radio, exhaling shakily when a flicker on the wall caught his eye. He turned the flashlight sharply. For an instant, he saw his own silhouette at the far end of the hall. But it wasn't moving with him. It stood perfectly still, head tilted unnaturally to the side, as though listening. Ethan's mouth went dry. "No," he whispered, his voice barely audible. He took a step back, his flashlight beam trembling. The figure vanished with the next flicker of light, leaving only the empty corridor. But Ethan could still feel it, pressing against him, watching from every shadow. His chest tightened until his breaths came short and sharp. He wanted to scream, but only silence escaped. Ethan stumbled backward, bumping into the wall, and his flashlight beam swung wildly. The silence deepened until it felt alive, crawling into his ears. He whispered, "It's not real. It can't be." Yet deep down, he felt the truth clawing. The cameras hadn't glitched. Something had copied him, something that now moved when it wanted. Ethan turned and hurried back toward the control room, every step ringing louder than it should. He imagined the shadow walking in stride behind him, its breath hot against his neck. His hand trembled on the door handle when he reached the room. The monitors inside flickered, static dancing violently across the screens. On every feed, Ethan's double now stood in multiple corridors, waiting. Ethan Cole slammed the control room door shut, his breath ragged as though he had run a mile. The monitors filled with static, then cleared one by one, showing him patrolling different corridors. Each version of himself moved independently, some glancing at the cameras, others standing still with heads tilted. His stomach churned as he muttered, "That's not me. That's not me." The fluorescent light above sputtered, plunging the room into short bursts of darkness. He pressed his palms against the console, trying to steady himself, but the feed only grew worse. His double on one screen suddenly smiled, a slow, unnatural curl of lips that Ethan never remembered making. His knees weakened. The building was no longer empty. It was crowded, with him. Ethan staggered back from the console, his heel knocking into the chair, sending it spinning. His eyes locked on one monitor, where his double raised its flashlight slowly, pointing it directly at the camera. Static surged, then cleared, showing the hallway outside the control room. The double was there, standing motionless, its flashlight beam cutting through the door frame. Ethan's throat closed in panic. "No, you can't be here." He turned to the door, but it remained shut. Still, the figure on the screen tilted its head, as though it heard him whisper. For a chilling moment, Ethan realized it didn't need the door. It already knew where he was. Ethan grabbed the radio again, his thumb trembling over the button, then pressed it hard. "Robert, do you copy? Someone's here." Static filled the line before Robert Hayes answered, his tone irritated. "Cole, calm down. You're alone in that building. Don't make problems where there aren't any." Ethan's heart sank. He stared at the monitors, where his doubles shifted restlessly, their movements no longer synchronized. One double paused mid-step, its head snapping toward the camera with mechanical speed. Ethan nearly dropped the radio. He whispered into the silence, "Then who the hell is that?" But Robert's voice had already cut out, leaving him abandoned in the storm of static. The overhead light popped with a sharp crack, plunging the room into near darkness, lit only by the glow of the monitors. Ethan's double on the nearest screen leaned close to the camera until its face filled the feed. Its eyes were black voids, static crawling across its skin like insects. Ethan stumbled backward, hitting the wall, his flashlight beam cutting across the room in frantic arcs. "Stay away from me," he shouted, though his voice trembled with desperation. The figure didn't respond, only pressed its forehead against the lens, distorting its features. Ethan's stomach twisted. His double wasn't just a reflection, it was alive, and it was hunting him. Ethan bolted from the control room, the door banging loudly against the wall. His footsteps pounded the hallway as the flashlight beam jittered wildly across doors and cracked tiles. His chest burned, but he didn't stop. The air was thick, every breath like drowning. He risked a glance at the nearest corridor camera. The feed above the hallway flickered, showing his double pacing just ahead of him, mimicking each frantic stride. Ethan slowed, heart thundering, as the realization crashed over him. The doubles weren't just watching, they were leading him somewhere. He whispered to himself, "Where are you taking me?" The silence gave no answer, only the sound of his echoing steps in a building that was no longer his own. Ethan Cole pushed through a stairwell door, the hinges groaning, his breath fogging in the chilled air. The stairwell was darker than the halls, shadows clinging to every corner. He descended slowly, each step echoing too loud. At the bottom, a metal filing cabinet stood against the wall, drawers rusted, labels faded. Something compelled him closer. His flashlight beam trembled as it landed on one drawer, labeled Incidents 1997. Ethan's hand shook as he pulled it open. Inside were files filled with reports, each written by gods before him. The words repeated in every file, shadows that looked like them, doubles seen on cameras. His stomach dropped as he realized he wasn't the first. Ethan rifled through the files, his eyes wide as the reports grew more frantic. One god wrote of hearing his own name whispered from vents. Another described his double smiling at him from a monitor. The final entry ended mid-sentence, ink smeared as if the writer was dragged away mid-word. Ethan's hands shook, papers slipping from his grip. He whispered, "How many before me?" The silence offered no answer. His flashlight beam flickered as the stairwell groaned, a heavy vibration running through the concrete. For a moment, Ethan swore he heard footsteps above, slow and deliberate, moving in sync with the words on the page. Ethan froze when a faint buzz came from his radio. He raised it to his ear, static hissing before a low voice whispered, "It's already inside." His stomach twisted. The voice was unfamiliar yet desperate. "Who is this?" he asked, but the static drowned the reply. A sudden sharp whisper followed, "Don't trust what walks like you." Ethan dropped the radio in shock, the clatter echoing in the stairwell. He bent to grab it, but the sound of metal scraping above made him stop. His double, or maybe more than one, was moving in the building above. Ethan pressed his back against the wall, listening. The sound grew louder, two sets of footsteps pacing in unison, then splitting apart. His chest tightened. He shined his flashlight up the stairwell. For a split second, two identical figures of himself peered down from the landing, their heads tilting at impossible angles. Ethan staggered, his breath ragged, and shouted, "Stay back!" But the figures only dissolved into static-like flickers, fading back into shadow. His flashlight beam caught only dust and concrete, but he knew what he had seen. His doubles were no longer contained in the monitors. They had escaped. Ethan stumbled into a service hallway, his breath sharp as knives. The corridor was lined with pipes, water dripping in slow rhythmic beats. He pressed a hand to his forehead, whispering, "This place is alive." At the end of the hall, the figure of a janitor appeared, mop in hand. For a moment, Ethan's chest loosened. Hey, you can't be here. It's not safe. The janitor raised his head, revealing hollow eyes, his mouth twisted into an agonized grin. The mop handle dropped, echoing against the tiles. Ethan realized too late the man wasn't a savior. He was a victim, already claimed by the building's hunger. Ethan Cole stumbled into the break room, gasping as though the walls themselves had chased him. The fluorescent light flickered above a table, scattered with half-eaten snacks and crumpled wrappers. He pressed his trembling hands against the counter, whispering, "Hold it together. Just hold it together." A voice answered from the corner, calm and steady. "Cole, you're losing it." Ethan spun around to see Daniel Price, a fellow guard he hadn't expected. Relief washed over him, almost making his knees buckle. "Daniel," he breathed, "thank God." But Daniel's eyes glimmered strangely, reflecting the same cold light as the monitors. Ethan took a step forward, desperate for connection. "You saw it too, didn't you?" Daniel Price rose slowly from his chair, his expression unreadable. "I've seen enough," he said softly. Ethan's relief faltered. Daniel moved closer, his shadow stretching unnaturally against the wall. "You should never have come here alone, Cole. This place doesn't forgive weakness." Ethan's chest tightened, his instincts screaming. The betrayal was sudden, but undeniable. Daniel wasn't here to help. He was guiding Ethan towards something darker. Ethan whispered, "What are you?" Daniel only smiled. Daniel Price leaned closer, his voice low like a confession. "You think those things came from nowhere? They've always been here, watching, waiting." Ethan's skin crawled as Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder, grip unnervingly firm. Ethan flinched, pulling away. "No, you're lying," Ethan muttered. Daniel tilted his head, his grin widening unnaturally. "I told them you'd come. You've already been chosen." The room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. Ethan backed into the wall, his flashlight beam quivering across Daniel's face. For a moment, Daniel's features rippled like static. Ethan shoved Daniel away, the chair clattering across the floor. He bolted from the break room into the hall, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly across cracked tiles. Behind him, Daniel's laughter followed, warped like static through a broken speaker. Ethan sprinted, but every corridor twisted, looping back onto itself. He gasped as he turned a corner, only to face the same hallway again. The building was folding in on him, bending reality. He pressed his hand against the wall, feeling it pulse like skin beneath plaster. His voice broke. "No, this isn't real." But the walls disagreed. They were alive. Ethan stumbled into a corridor that stretched endlessly, monitors lining both walls. Each screen displayed a different version of him, some walking, some standing still, others whispering silently. His breathing quickened as he realized he was surrounded. A screen directly in front of him flickered, revealing his double staring back with dead eyes. Then it stepped out of the screen, its shoes echoing on the tiles as though it had always been there. Ethan staggered backward, flashlight trembling. His throat tightened as he whispered, "You're not me." The double tilted its head, lips curling into a cruel imitation of a smile. Ethan Cole backed away as his double stepped fully out of the screen, shoes echoing against the tiles with unnatural weight. Its movements were deliberate, smooth, too precise. Ethan whispered, "Stay back." His flashlight beam trembled as it lit the double's face, showing every feature identical, except the eyes, dark voids humming faintly with static. Behind Ethan, the monitors flickered violently, and more doubles pressed against the glass, their hands smearing the screens as though eager to break free. Ethan's chest tightened. He realized this wasn't one copy. There were countless waiting, each eager to walk the halls in his skin. The double advanced, its lips twitching as it spoke in Ethan's exact voice. "You've done this for years. We'll take it from here." Ethan staggered, his mind spinning. The sound of his own voice from another mouth broke something inside him. He raised the radio, but static screamed from it, making his ears ring. He dropped it and shouted, "You're not me!" The doubles on the monitors laughed in unison, the sound glitching like broken tape. One screen shattered, glass raining onto the floor, as another copy pulled itself into reality. Ethan knew he couldn't face them all. His only chance was to fight the one in front of him. Ethan lunged at the nearest double, swinging the flashlight with raw desperation. The beam crashed against its head, sparks bursting as though metal struck metal. The figure staggered but didn't fall. It straightened slowly, smile unbroken, skin rippling with static. Ethan's breath came in gasps, sweat pouring down his face. He struck again, harder, screaming, "I'm real." The blow knocked the double against the wall, its form flickering between flesh and shadow. For a heartbeat, Ethan thought he won, until the copy's hands snapped forward, gripping his throat with inhuman strength. The double's grip tightened, Ethan clawing at its arms as his vision blurred. He gasped, choking, but then slammed his flashlight into its chest. The beam pulsed unnaturally, burning into the figure's skin like light made solid. The double screamed in Ethan's own voice, distorted and broken. Ethan ripped free, collapsing to the floor, gasping. Around him, the other monitors shattered one after another, each double stepping into reality. Dozens of him, all with black eyes, filled the hallway. Ethan realized the battle wasn't about survival anymore. It was about being replaced. Ethan staggered to his feet, chest heaving, his flashlight flickering like a dying flame. The doubles encircled him, dozens of identical faces staring blankly. One stepped forward, speaking softly, "You've been relieved, go rest." Ethan's body trembled as fear collided with fury. He screamed, "I won't let you take me," and charged into the swarm, swinging wildly. The hallway erupted in chaos. Flashes of light, static bursts, and the echo of his own voice multiplied 100 times. For a fleeting moment, Ethan felt powerful, defiant. But the swarm swallowed him whole, and the building fell silent once again. The hallway fell quiet, the chaos swallowed as though it had never happened. Ethan Cole opened his eyes slowly, expecting pain, but instead found himself back in the control room. The fluorescent light hummed overhead, steady, calm, as if nothing had changed. His uniform was clean, his breathing even, though his hands still shook. On the desk, the monitors glowed with static before stabilizing into crisp images of empty halls. Ethan whispered, "Was it a dream?" But when he leaned closer, the screen showed him seated exactly where he sat now, leaning forward in disbelief. His reflection didn't blink. Ethan rose slowly, his legs unsteady, and touched the monitor screen. The glass felt warm, almost alive beneath his fingertips. On the feed, his reflection leaned in at the same time, though its smile grew as his lips remained still. Ethan jerked his hand back, heart hammering. "No," he whispered, but the grin widened, teeth sharp in a way his never were. The fluorescent light flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness. When it steadied, the reflection was gone. Only an empty chair stared back at him from the monitor, though Ethan knew he was sitting there. The radio crackled on the desk, startling him. Robert Hayes' voice came through, casual, dismissive. "Cole, shift's over. Good work tonight." Ethan's breath hitched. He glanced at the clock. Sunrise was still hours away. "Robert?" he asked shakily. Silence followed, then another voice answered, lower, identical to his own. "You're done now." Ethan stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The static hissed louder, filling the room like whispers, every voice his own. He clutched his ears, desperate to block them out, but the noise grew inside his skull. Ethan staggered toward the hallway, desperate to escape. He flung the door open, but the corridor outside was wrong, longer, darker, with monitors lining the walls where none had been before. Each screen flickered with a version of him, walking, running, screaming, even standing still with eyes blackened. He backed up, whispering, "No, no, no," but the screens followed, stretching endlessly. His doubles pounded on the glass, mouths opening in silent screams, waiting to break through again. Ethan realized he had nowhere left to go. The building had remade itself into his prison. Ethan turned back toward the control room, desperate for grounding, but the doors slammed shut behind him with a metallic clang. The monitors ahead glowed brighter until only one image remained, Ethan himself sitting calmly in the chair, hands folded, face expressionless. His breath caught as he realized it wasn't him anymore. A faint whisper echoed through the hallway, his own voice calling his name, Ethan. He dropped the flashlight, its beam rolling across the tiles. The sound of footsteps followed, measured and steady. Not his own. The screen version stood, smiled, and walked away into the dark, leaving Ethan to vanish into silence.